I'll tell you who they were talking about. The name Ed Renshie popped up last week.
1 minute
Ed
until
Renshie is a
showtime.
guy who used to be the head of McDonald's.
Oh, yeah.
And he was on the board of International Speedway Corporation for years. He would be the perfect guy to take it over, get the McDonald's money behind it, you know? And
Yeah.
he's a racer. He's owned Bush teams. He gets it. And that's what you need is somebody like that.
Need a gearhead.
Yes, sir, buddy. All right. Are you going to be okay leaning into that mic? You need to a
I'll
little
be all
closer?
right. I'll be okay.
Okay. All right.
If I don't be all right, I says I'm bailing out.
You don't want to do that. I got a good joke about that.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds.
5
4,
seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Yay! Yay! Whoopee!
Now, from the world's most famous beach, from where beach racing began, it's the Legends of Racing radio show. Live from racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill in Ponce Inlet, Florida. The Legends of Racing radio show. And your host, Buz McKim.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And welcome to the North Turn Restaurant, folks. I am your humble servant, Buz McKim. And today is going to be a hoot. You have no idea what you're in for. I have no idea what I'm in for, so we'll have to just see how it works out. Our special guest today is a guy named Olin Hopes. And the name might not come to you immediately, but when you see what he's been involved in almost from the day he was born, you'll see the impact that he had on drag racing, street rods, NASCAR, you name it. He's been involved. And one of the real true pioneers, one of the real unsung heroes. And here's my old buddy, Olin Hopes.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, we're down here at the North Turn. It is a beautiful day. The ocean is nice and calm, a big wide beach, and we're going to have a good time today.
Yep. Yes. Now, you know a little bit about that beach, don't you?
I've been on the beach ever since I was 2 years old.
Yeah.
The best playground any kid could ever have.
Yeah. Now, you know, most folks think that you're actually a native Daytonan, but you're one of them Yankees from New York, aren't you?
Yes, I'm a transplant.
Mm-hmm.
My dad came down here in 35. My dad was a dairy farmer, and he called my mother up while he was down here in Daytona. He said, if you want to stay married to me, pack up my 4 daughters, my newborn son, the 2 grandmothers, and my mother drove a 1926 Nash touring car. It took her 5 days to get Daytona Beach from Amsterdam, New York. And I've been here ever since.
Man, now Amsterdam, New York, you were probably the second most famous native of Amsterdam, New York, the first being Kirk Douglas, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
My older sister went to school with him.
I'll be darned. Yeah, so, but you left Amsterdam in pretty good shape when you...
I was 6 weeks old when we
Oh.
left Amsterdam.
I got you. So how did this whole car thing come about? I mean, it being in Daytona, that's going to be a natural, but how did you get affected?
Well, I went to Lenox Avenue School here in Daytona Beach, up on Grandview Avenue. I had to walk to school every morning, and even I'd walk back to the house. I lived at 27 North Grandview, and across the street from our house was a garage that people used to store their cars in there in the summertime while they were up north for their summer vacations. And I came home from school one evening. We got out of school at 3 o'clock, and here's all these cars across from the house. It had to be at least 50 of them, and they were painted all different colors, and they had numbers on them. And I asked my dad, I says, what's with the cars? He says, there are race cars. He says, don't you go over there. You'll get in trouble or get hurt. And I kept looking over there and looking over there. And then they crank up those engines, old flatheads, 6 cylinders. And I said, boy, ain't they neat looking. So my dad said, don't go over there, you'll get hurt. Well, you know what happened, don't you? My dad had to go off somewhere, and I made a beeline right across the street, and I'm walking around, I'm looking in the garage and everything, and these guys were working on their cars inside the garage. The inspection, where they did the inspection, was over on Blue Road at the Armory. But the mechanics coming off the beach would come in there and work on their cars before they go over and have them inspected. And I'm in there looking at the cars, and this gentleman came up to me. He says, boy, what are you doing in here? I says, I just want to look at the pretty race cars. He says, well, you can get hurt in here. I says, I'll be very careful. And I look around, and there's garbage all over the floor, cans. I said, I'll tell you what I'll do if you let me stay. He said, what's that? I said, I'll clean up, keep the floors clean and all the trash picked up if you let me stay. He says, you do that? I said, yes, sir, I sure will. So I started cleaning up. And then, lo and behold, this is where I ran into Bill France Jr. He was a couple of years ahead of me in school. And he comes in, he looks at me, he says, what are you doing here? I looked at him, I says, what do you mean, what am I doing here? I says, what's it to you? He says, my daddy runs this outfit. I says, who's your daddy? Bill France. I says, I looked at him, I says, I pointed to the man and said I could stay. And I says, is that your daddy? He says, no. I said, well, you can kiss my butt. I said, that man said I can stay. And I told him he was so-and-so. He said, I'll whip your butt. And I said, you can't catch me. And from that day on, Bill France Jr. and I had a go. Every time I saw him, I went the other way and he tried to catch me. And believe it or not, he did catch me one time by accident. I forget what year it was. It was at Charlotte Motor Speedway. I was getting ready to go into the garage area, and I walked in behind this gentleman, and it was Bill France Jr. And he was having a problem with his cancer at that time. And I saw Bachhoven first. I said, Bachhoven, you still working? He says, why not? They pay me. And then Bill France turned around, he grabbed me, he said, now I got you. I said, oh my God. I said, by gosh, you did get me, didn't you?
So you first met him around 1946, and
Yep.
he finally got you around 2005, right?
Whatever.
Yeah, okay, well.
And he wasn't in any shape to do any fighting.
Yeah.
And I says, well, I'll hand it to you. You did catch me. But it was my fault because I didn't pay attention to who I walked up behind. So that's how that story went. And like I said, I grew up here in Daytona Beach. I was very fortunate. That's how I got hooked on racing. My first race that I went to was here on the beach right after the war, 1946. It wasn't even NASCAR then. I rode my brand new bicycle from Main Street at 27 North Grandview up here to the turn, North Turn. And if you were under 10 years old, you were allowed free at the racetrack if your parents were with you. Well, my parents didn't even know where I was. And I walked up against this young couple that were walking, and I grabbed this guy's hand, and I jumped up and down, and I said, we were at the gate. I said, oh, good, Daddy, we're going to the races. The guy looked down at me. He said, I know what you're up to. He said, come on, I'll take you in. So that's how I got to see my first race here on the beach. And the one that impressed me mostly that day was names. I just lost it.
Marshall Teague.
Marshall Teague in the zero. He come down that beach, and the bleachers were right behind there. And you could see him come down that beach, and he threw that old 40 Mercury or 39 Mercury, two-door sedan, sideways for almost a half a mile down that beach to make this turn. And that just impressed me something. I just couldn't believe they could do that. Well, after that, I managed to get back to the house that evening, and I didn't get scolded or anything. I told my mother where I was. How'd you get there? I said, I rode my bike. You better tell your daddy. So I told my dad, and he said, you didn't get in no trouble. I said, no, sir. He said, all right. So from that time on, I was hooked on racing. And I always wanted to go racing, but I never had any money. I was always broke. And so when I started racing, I started out drag racing in 1952. And I had a flathead 40 Ford coupe. My brother-in-law had a 39. Later on, he had a 39 Ford coupe with a flathead in it that set a National B record in Flagler in 1955. His 40 Ford coupe ran 100 miles an hour in 11 seconds. That was unheard of for a flathead to run that fast in a quarter of a mile. Then we went on. I started hanging out at Smokey's garage, Ray Fox's garage.
Smokey who?
Smokey Unique.
Oh, that guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The great Smokey. I went to work for Ray Fox in 1959, 1960. I worked for Red Volt. I worked for Marshall Teague. Hard man to work for, but they all taught me a lot. That's what got me through life, made a good living at it. Could have made a lot more money if they wanted to willing to pay me. Ray Fox I went to work for 6.5 years, and the only way I could get a raise is have an argument with him and leave. I used to go out to Red Volt, pull up, and Ray be calling Pappy, says, tell him to get his butt back here. He needs to finish up his job. He says, he's already unloaded his toolbox. And Pappy says, I can't afford to pay you anything. I don't have enough work. I said, I work for nothing. So that's what I did. I worked for nothing. But I learned a lot from Pappy. He's a wonderful man to work for. I had a blast working for him. He was a lot of fun to work for. And then after a while, Foxy would come up with some more money. I would go back to work for him. And that's the way it went on for 6.5 years that I did with Ray. I had my ups and downs with him. I had fist fights with him.
A love-hate relationship?
It was a love-hate relation.
Now,
you could love the guy one minute because he was civil, and the other minute he was a horse's ass.
Now, Smokey was always after you to come to work for him, right?
Yeah, Smokey says, you're not working again. I said, no, Foxy. He said, you had another argument? I said, yeah. Why don't you come to work for me? I said, Smokey. I said, no, not really. I said, I'd love to, but I don't think I can work for you. He says, why? Because I ain't allowed to say this.
No, go ahead.
I says, I'm working for a son of a bitch. I don't need to come work for another one. I says, unless you and I stay friends. with that funny little cowboy hat. He looked at me and shook his head, and he kind of got a grin on his face. He says, "Okay, Olin, we'll stay friends." I says, "Thank you." So
Now-
that's the way that story went.
Now, did you ever drive yourself? Did you ever actually race?
No, I did not. The only time I got to drive the race car is when Ray Fox, we had to go on a tire test. And we were sponsored by Firestones. And we were up there on a Firestone test at Darlington. Junior came to the car that morning. He says, he looks at me. Junior says, "Is the car ready?" I says, "Well, you see it sitting there. It's ready."
That was Junior Johnson, right?
Junior Johnson.
Right.
He went over and put his hand on the hood, came back, and he says, "Olin, that car is not ready." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "The engine ain't warm." He said, "Go out and warm it up for me." And I lit up like a Christmas tree. I'd jump in the race car, and I'd take a couple of laps with it. And he'd be out there on the track, motion me to go a little bit faster. Well, I didn't want to wreck the car, but I'd speed it up a little bit and speed it up a little bit. Then I'd come in. Then right after I come in, here comes Foxy.
Now, we're going to have to stop right there just for a second. Got to leave you all on this cliffhanger here. We're going to have a break here from one of our lovely sponsors. And now we're going to take a break.
Yay!
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Welcome to Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. You're right in the middle of all the action. Daytona International Speedway, the airport, One Daytona, Florida's newest entertainment and retail destination, and of course, the world's most famous beach. You'll love our newly remodeled 1- and 2-bedroom suites, along with our popular King Studios. You won't need your full kitchen, as Homewood Suites Daytona serves up complimentary breakfast and evening social. It's like home away from home. Go to HomewoodDaytona.com for Homewood Suites by Hilton in Daytona Beach. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buz McKim.
Yay! Yay!
Thank you, everyone. I'm so undeserving of that. Yeah. Anyway, hey, we're going to get back with Olin. He had just warmed up the car at Darlington for Junior Johnson, just pulled back in the pits, and here comes the car's owner and Olin's boss, Ray Fox, who had a very short fuse. What happened then?
Well, he didn't catch me in the car, so I didn't get scolded. We didn't have an argument. But we were there for a couple of days on a tire test. Well, the next morning, went back to the racetrack, and Ray wasn't there. Junior wasn't there. So we're just sitting around, and we had a couple of motorcycles up there. So Firestone had a couple of tires for a motorcycle, racing tires. They put them on this Honda motorcycle. And he says, "Why don't you take them out, take the bike out, and warm up these tires for us?" I said, "Can I?" He said, "Sure." So I got on the motorcycle, and I went around the racetrack. Well, back in the old Darlington days, number 3 turns and 4 turns, they used to put down what they call bear grease. It was like a sealer, I guess. And if you didn't have your car handling right, you ended up in the guardrail and you got the Darlington stripe. So I got on the motorcycle and I went down in number 1 turn. I said, "Woo, boy, this is something." And I come out of number 2 going down the back stretch, and I was clipping right along pretty decent. So I brought the motorcycle down on the inside, and the back end of the motorcycle was fishtailing. And I says, don't let up on the gas. Keep the gas on. So I did, and I kind of puckered up a little bit, and I says, you know, the guys were in the pits, motioned me to go faster, go faster. Well, I says, well, if I go down in that turn, if I stay close to the guardrail, if I do lose control, I'll bounce off of it instead of sliding up into it and hitting it. So when I came out of number 2 turn, going down into number 3, I says, okay, I opened it wide open. And the turn came up, I says, don't back off on the throttle. And my old hand was just a shaking, and my hand wanted to back off. I went into that turn, and she stuck. And they had a bunch of workers working in the 4th turn building new bleachers. They were doing concrete work, and I went by them. They all jumped up, and I made a real good fast pass, and Ray Fox shows up. I'm out on the racetrack with this Honda motorcycle going like a bat out of hell, and Ray's sitting there looking around. He says, where's Olin? Everybody just pointed at the racetrack. He says, oh my God. He says, his mother will kill me if anything happens to him. So he gets out on the track and he flags me down. So I pull back in the pits. He says, who gave you permission to do that? I says, me. I says, I'm 21 years old. I'm capable of doing what I want to do. He says, I don't want to see you on that track again. I said, yes, sir. And that was the end of my motorcycle career. I still didn't get to drive a race car. I drove the race car. I drove the Dodge number 3 car at Charlotte on our tire test for junior. And Atlanta. I've been very fortunate. I've been to Victory Circle at Daytona. I've been in the Victory Circle at Darlington, 1962, and they took it away from us. Then we won it with Mr. Baker in 64, wasn't it?
Yeah, Buck Baker. That's
Buck
right.
Baker. And then we won Atlanta. They're the racetracks that I was very fortunate to go in Victory Circle with.
Very interesting little ironic twist of history here. Olin was involved with the crew with Buck Baker at Darlington in 1964 when Buck was thought to be over the hill, too old to race. Everybody thought Ray Fox was crazy for hiring him, but Buck goes out, wins the race. It was his last win. Olin was on the team. 1967, I believe it was, at Charlotte, Olin was on the team. Dodge number 3, Buddy Baker driving. He wins at Charlotte. That was Buddy's first win. So Olin was involved with Buck's last win and his son Buddy's first win. How about that?
One other story about Charlotte Motor Speedway. We went up there in 1961 with a Pontiac. We got to the racetrack. We didn't have a driver. And Norris Friel, chief inspector, said, what are you going to do for a driver, Fox? I don't have one. He says, I got a young boy, a young man. He'd be perfect for your race car. He says, where's he at? He says, come on and get in the car with me and we'll go get him. So we went down the road. The guy's up on the roof putting shingles down. And called him down off the roof. He came down, had his nail apron on. He says, Mr. Fox says, understand you like to drive race cars? He says, yes, sir. He says, would you like to drive my race car? He says, whereabouts? At Charlotte Motor for the World 600. He says, heck yeah. He took his apron off and threw it up on the roof, and he says, see you later, boys. I'm going racing. So he shows up to the track, and we put him in the race car. He went out on the track, made about 4 or 5 laps, came in. Foxy went up to David, says, okay, Pearson, what's it need? Pearson looked at him. He says, you got to be kidding me. He says, it don't need nothing. I have never driven a car that fast on a track this big. He says, it's ready to run. So, believe it or not, he was our driver from that day on. And when they dropped the flag, green flag, start, he dropped off the track, off the apron, on the grass, and took the lead on the green flag and won the World 600, his first race.
David Pearson, isn't that amazing? This guy, he has been an eyewitness to history. Interesting about that race, too, Pearson blew the left rear tire with about 2 laps to go, and he darn sure wasn't going to come in to get a change, so he finished the race basically on 3 wheels. He came across the finish line, as fast as you can go on 3 wheels, sparks flying. But then, not only that, but he backed it up with 2 more wins that year. He won the Firecracker 250 here at Daytona, and he also won in Atlanta. 3 major races for a rookie driver, and, of course, he couldn't have done it without you, right?
Well,
yeah.
I helped prepare the car. I'm very thankful that when I worked on the race car, I'd made damn sure that the race cars were safe, because I wouldn't drive it unless I thought it was safe. And I made damn sure everything that I did on the race cars was done to the very best they could be done at the time. And I had a couple run-ins with the inspectors a couple of times.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I can't imagine. Jeez.
I threatened one inspector with a 12-inch crescent wrench. I said, you touch that car, I'm going to lay this crescent wrench right up beside your head.
You didn't
The next thing I heard over the PA system was Mr. Norris Friel. Olin Hopes, report to my office now. Well, I wouldn't go because I know what he was going to do. So, Mr. Fox, report to my office now. Next thing I know, Foxy's pulling me out from underneath the car. He said, what did you do? I said, I threatened to hit that man if he touched the race car. He says, I got an illegal belly pan on the car. I says, no, I don't. You got to read between the lines. And I says, legally, I'm legal. And the guy says I'm not. And he wants me to take and rip all that stuff out that took me 3 days to put under there. So I went to the office. Norris Friel sitting there looking at me, shaking his head. What am I going to do with you, Olin? I says, I ain't done nothing wrong. He said, you threatened one of my inspectors. I said, yes, I did. And I meant it. He says, I'll bar you from the track. I said, well, I guess you got the right to do that. But I says, I'll still be working on the race cars because we got the right to work law here in the state of Florida. I'll be working. It'll be on race cars. He says, just behave yourself, will you? I said, I will, mister. I will.
I understand you were off of their Christmas card list after that. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I heard. But he wouldn't take any baloney off of anybody. I don't care who it was or how big they were.
But, you know, the reason I was that way, I've always been small. And I always had these big guys picking on me. So I always had to stand up to them. And I got more respect by standing up and then taking what the bull that they were throwing at me. Yeah.
Well, we're going to be taking a break here in just about a minute or so. But when we come back, I'm going to throw some names out to you, and I'd like to have your opinion of who these people were, what they meant to you. maybe a few anecdotes that we can tell in mixed company. You
Oh,
think
yeah.
that'll be all right? Okay.
I can do
sounds
that.
good. Yeah, so we're going to take a break here just for a second. Pay attention to these commercials because these folks are keeping us going, okay?
Yay. Amen.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. Racing's original North Turn is our broadcast headquarters. If you're looking for a good drink, great entertainment, and the best in food, they're right on the beach at Racing's original North Turn. Rhonda and Walt invite you to come on down to dinner tonight. Here are a couple of testimonials. These are actual testimonials from people who have enjoyed the North Turn. Been there many times, always great food and drinks, great location on the beach. And another, what a great experience. It's my new favorite restaurant in the Daytona Beach area, Racing's Original North Turn on South Atlantic Avenue. That's A1A in Ponce Inlet, about 3.2 miles south of the Dunlawton Bridge and A1A intersection. It's Racing's Original North Turn, a restaurant, museum, bar, gift shop, live music. That's Racing's North Turn. Racing's North Turn has been voted by you top 10 beach bar 7 years in a row. Next year, they're going for top 5. We're back from where it all began. Racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buz McKim.
Yay, yay.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. And my comical sidekick, Olin Hopes. Before we get started on this second half of the show, I got to point out a celebrity who walked in a little while ago. If you look around the building here, there's someone who was just so synonymous with this beach, with the races on the beach, with the North Turn, and it was a fellow who was the NASCAR photographer T. Taylor Warren, and his daughter Diana is sitting right here at the bar. Take a bow there, Miss Dudley. Look at that. I'll tell
Good
you
man,
what,
good man.
If it wasn't for T. Taylor Warren, most of the NASCAR history would have been lost.
Yes.
And the most famous, in fact, when I headed up the archive department at the Speedway, we had like 2 million photographs at our disposal. And the one people wanted the most popular photograph in the entire collection is, if you go through the double doors here, you'll see a big poster of an aerial shot of the North Turn. And Taylor took that from his brother-in-law's plane, and no, not that one, but the other one, and it is the most popular photo, I think, in the history of NASCAR. And thank you for what your father contributed to the sport.
He's a good man.
Absolutely. Well, we have a cast of characters that we're going to bounce off of you and see if you can be politically correct.
I hear you.
Okay, how about Red Vote?
Pappy. I call him Pappy.
Now, this is the guy who was the master mechanic of all mechanics in the early days of NASCAR, built moonshiner engines and revenuer engines in the same shop. Who did he do a better job on? He said, the moonshiner's paid in cash, so you figure it out, right? But he's also the guy who came up with the name NASCAR.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, and Smokey Yunick, who many consider the greatest mechanic of all time, he called Red Vote Merlin, as in Merlin the Magician. But anyway, I don't want to take any more time away from Olin, but what do you think of old Pappy?
He was a wonderful man to work for. I had a lot of fun with that man. We built a 63 Stingray Corvette sent down here by the factory, and we reworked it to run the Paul Revere 300, I think it was called then. Johnny Allen was our race driver. We took it to Sebring and ran down there, and I think we finished 5th overall, first in our class at Sebring, 1963. And as we were working on the Corvette, I was underneath the car, and I didn't see Pappy.
Oh, now, before we get into this, Red Vote had kind of an unusual hobby.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Pappy had a saying, and he always had sayings like, "Don't mind the mule being blind, just go ahead and load the wagon." And he had another one of his favorite ones. he let out a little bitty fart. He says, Olin, did you just fart? I said, yeah, by accident. He said, no. He says, a farting horse never tires. A farting man's the man to hire.
Yep.
He says, I'm going to put you to work. So that's what I did. And then he walked by the Corvette, didn't have his shoes on, didn't have his pants on. I rolled out from underneath the Corvette. The man's standing in his birthday suit. And I said, what in the world are you doing? He said, I had an accident. I said, oh, okay. So that's how that story went.
Now, the story goes, too, that where Ray Fox's shop was down on what was known as the Seabreeze Circle.
Yes.
And there was a little diner in the middle of that circle. And
Marty's Drive-In?
I think it was, yeah.
Marty's Drive-In.
But old Red loved the chili. So he'd go over there every day for lunch, right? And eat that chili. Now, what happened?
Well, we'd go over there. I'd get to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and open up the shop. And then we worked to noontime, and we'd go over and have lunch. Sure enough, we'd have beans, chili, and Marty said, I'm making up a big pot of chili for tonight. Well, 6 o'clock rolled around, we go over and have supper. Well, midnight, we go over and have a snack, and we have more chili. Well, by this time, you know what's going on. Our stomach is rumbling, boy. And then it's like that cowboy movie with all the guys sitting around the circle. Grown men sitting around in the diner. Place is closed, but we're all sitting there going. And Marty, the one that made the chili, he was always trying to beat Pappy. Pappy says, he ain't gonna beat me. So he's over there and he's straining to let one more go. He said, I think that's the last one I've got. Pappy says, I got you. Pappy's sitting on a whoopee cushion. And he lifted up his cheek and it went, Rip! Marty says, okay, I give up. You're the champ. So that's one of those stories.
So whenever you see the name NASCAR, think about where that name came from and the person that was behind that name and his whoopee cushion. Classic.
Whoopee cushion.
Classic. How about Smokey?
Smokey is, I love the way Smokey worked. He'd make something or he'd get something and improve it. Constantly trying to make it better. And I used to go to the shop when I needed something that Mr. Fox didn't have. I'd go over there and push the little button, and the door would pop open. I'd walk in. Smokey said, okay, what do you need today? I said, I need to borrow this and borrow that. This was 1961. He's building a 61 Pontiac, and we're building a 61 Pontiac. So Smokey came over to the shop. He walks around the race car, and he looks at me. He says, I got you. I said, what do you got me for? He said, I'll tell you later. So I went back over to the shop to take those tools back that I borrowed. I hit the button. The door didn't pop open. The door cracked open. Smokey standing there has a hold of the handle. He says, what do you want? I said, I'm bringing back your tools. I said, let me in. He said, nope, you're not welcome in my shop anymore. I says, why? He says, you're stealing my ideas. I says, I haven't stolen anything from you. He says, your 61 Pontiac's got the same stuff that my car's got on it. I said, yeah, but our car's almost finished and you're only halfway done. What have I been stealing? He said, well, you're not welcome inside my shop anymore. If you need something, come to the door. If I got it, you can have it. I said, okay. But that went by the wayside later on because we wasn't stealing anything from him, any of his ideas. We was at Charlotte Motor Speedway, 1963, with the mystery car engines. And Smokey had a Chevrolet mystery car engine. He had A.J. Foyt driving for him. Now, he come to the racetrack with a brand new, beautiful white uniform with best damn garage on the back of his shirt and his hat, everything creased, and he'd be working on that race car. We went out, and we set both our cars on the pole, inside and outside pole. And we brought the cars in, we covered them up, and Bill Holman and myself was sitting on the trunk of the car waiting for 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock came, here comes Smokey Unique walking by the car. And he's looking at the cars and shaking his head. I said, what are you shaking your head for, Smokey? He said, I just don't know what the hell you guys are doing to get that car around that track as fast as you're getting around. He said, I got one of the best drivers known to man right at the present, and I can't get through 3 and 4 with the hoot. And he said, you got both your cars sitting on a pole. He said, I got the best damn garage in town. I says, yeah, Smokey, you do. You have got the best shop in town. But Ray Fox has got the fastest one.
Now, didn't you guys used to have dueling dynos?
Oh, yeah, at 3 o'clock in the morning. Smokey'd be over there working. We'd be in the shop. We had a Clayton dyno. We had 2 Clayton dynos. He had 1. We had a drive-on dyno. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden we hear this whoa, coming across the river, and the lights on the other side of the river are clicking on. So what does Ray Fox do? Goes over to the dyno, cranks up our engine. And we're running back and forth, wide open, wide open. And all of a sudden, guess who comes into the shop? A sheriff and the City of Daytona Beach Police Department. What in the heck are you guys doing? What do you mean what we're doing? We're working. We're testing our engines. He says, not at 3 o'clock in the morning. He says, we got half the beach side complaining about the noise. He says, knock it off for the night. So that's what we did. We shut down that night.
Oh, you know, Smokey was one of the workingest guys ever. That day he was talking about when Smokey showed up with a nice pressed, you know, pleated. Yeah. What did he look like at the end of the day?
Black. And Ray Fox, he'd wear a white uniform also, and he never used a shop rag. He used his back pockets. You could tell it was Ray Fox because if you looked behind and saw his butt, you saw black on both cheeks because he'd run both hands down his pockets.
But it was so funny when I headed up the archives. It was down on Blue Road, just down the street from Smokey's shop. Yeah. And Smokey always did his own work. If he needed something to do on the shop or on the building or dig a hole for whatever, he was the guy that did it. Did all his own work. So we had a tour in the archives one day, and there's a knock on the door, and it's Smokey. And at the time, he was writing his book, so he'd come down and get information from us and stuff, you know. But anyway, he was working on something out in front of the shop. It was the middle of the summer, blazing hot. And here is this guy. He comes in, and here is this mechanical wizard that everybody bows to, and I did too. I thought he was brilliant, one of the most amazing people in the history of the sport. Anyway, he's pouring down sweat, filthy dirty. He doesn't have a shirt on. His underwear is hanging out of his pants, and his glasses are on crooked. And here comes this crew coming through, and it's like, that is the mechanical wizard of all time. He looks like a street person, for crying out loud. Holy cow.
A homeless person.
A homeless, exactly. And we were right next to a friend of ours used to call it the Rent-A-Drunk place, you know, were day labor. So, you know, I'm sure they thought that he might have been from the day labor shop. But yeah, Smokey's shop and Ray Fox's shop were down there on the river at Ballou Road and Mason Avenue, only a couple hundred yards from each other.
Yep.
So you had a tremendous amount of competition there. One time, Ray Fox Jr. got mad and went to work for Smokey. Smokey Unick Jr. got mad and went to work for Ray.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that worked out real well. You know, nice conversation at the dinner table. Yes, sir. So growing up here, though, you've seen so much and so many changes, not only in the sport but in the town itself. And we're going to have to talk about, you know, things that you think could make life and racing a little bit easier, you know, when we come back from our next break.
Okay, we can do that.
The caution flag is out. Time for a break. We'll be right back with the Legends of Racing radio show. At Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees, it's all about making you happy. Beach Boys Embroidery can customize your athletic golf apparel, caps, hats, badges, buttons, magnets, backpacks, bags, totes, clocks, watches, oh, and of course, T-shirts. Sure, they're at 2033 South Ridgewood Avenue in South Daytona, and they're waiting for you to call now. 386-255-5880. Beach Boys Embroidery and Tees. We're back from where it all began, racing's original North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. The Legends of Racing radio show continues with your host, Buz McKim.
Yay.
Thank you. I'm only as good as my guests, that's for sure. So one more person that we need to talk about is someone who I know had a tremendous influence on your life, Ray Fox. Where did you meet him? And, I mean, you guys go way back, don't you?
Ray Fox and I go back. I started hanging around Ray Fox in 1958, 59, when I was drag racing. And he come to the track, he says, "You've got a fast car." He said, "But we can make it faster." I said, "Okay." I said, "We don't have any money." He said, "Don't worry about that." So we built, Jerry Harpo and myself built a rail job, a slingshot back them days. And I had a Corvette engine that I bought off of Smokey years ago. And we took it, we tore it down, reworked it, put it all back together, and Pappy walked in. He says, "What are you running for carburation?" I says, 2 4-barrels. He said, "No, not good enough." He said, "I'm going to put 3 fish carburetors on it." He says, "Special carburetors."
Special. And coming from Pappy, it was a special carburetor, one that he actually reworked himself. We put the 3 fish carburetors on this engine, and he says, "All right," I was running a Giovanni racing cam that was built right here in Port Orange, Florida, on the Causeway. It was a Giovanni racing cam. Pappy says, "Call the police department, block off Blue Road." So we called the police department. They come down. They knew we were going to test the car. Are you kidding me?
They come right down and block off the road and block off Seabreeze Circle.
That's what you call clout.
And we take and push the car down towards the armory, turn around at the armory. The reason we did that was to build up oil pressure because the car didn't have a starter. We built up oil pressure and fuel pressure. Then he pushed me off and I'd fire it up and go down to the shop and pull into the garage. And Red Bolt, Foxy, and myself were the only people in the garage, and they'd sit there and rub that engine up and setting the timing on it. And Pappy would sit there and grin from ear to ear. He says, "Boy, that's a sweet sounding engine." I tell you what, I have never seen it. I never saw it before in my life. but it set up, I don't know what you call it, a vibration, a sound wave that cracked the windows in the shop.
Wow. Really?
The engine would turn over 9,000 RPMs. So Pappy says, we got the timing set just right. He says, go to the track and have fun. So Ray Fox, myself, and some of my buddies, and there was another gentleman that used to go with us. I don't remember his name. But we went to Jacksonville. And the Jacksonville boys didn't like us. Because Flagler, they didn't like anybody from Flagler either. If you had a tag on your car that had a 61 license plate on it, you didn't mess with it because he had outrun you. So we were up there and we won everything that day. And they were protesting us, and I went down the track and I turned 160 miles an hour in 9 seconds in a quarter mile.
Holy
And at the end of the quarter mile, you could get out and look at the carburetors, and there would be a quarter of an inch of ice on all the carburetors.
Holy cow.
That's how that sucker was sucking air in. And Foxy come down, he says, hurry up, let's get loaded up and get out of here because they want to fight. So we loaded up the car and went back to Daytona Beach.
Don't you hate sore losers, huh?
We didn't even get our trophy. We wanted that back then. That's all we got was trophies. And then later on, we started running. We'll run, but we don't want to run for trophy. We need money. Because Jerry didn't work. I was the only one that was working. And I had a car payment to make. I think I lost my car because I couldn't make my car payments. I said, that'll never happen again. But it was one of my first 57 Chevrolets. I lost my car because I couldn't make the car payments. Boy, that hit me hard. It embarrassed me in front of all my friends. Where's your car? Oh, it was repossessed. What? I said, I didn't have money to pay for it. It was all in the race car. And I was supporting my buddy, paying his room and board. But he's still my friend today. He lives out in Colorado. He plays with street rods like I do. Mm-hmm. And he also still does off-road motorbikes.
Oh, really?
And he's 82 years old and still racing.
Oh, yeah. Good for him. Jeez. Well, now, you were one of the founders of the Daytona Beach Street Rod Club and the Turkey Rod Run, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. I started here in Daytona Beach in 1955. We started a club called the Beach Angels. Yeah, we were angels, all right. So the guys got together and says, Beach Angels, we're not angels. Let's change our name. So we changed it to Daytona Beach Creepers. Our logo was a snail. You know what a snail is? On his back had twin carburetors, had dual exhaust, and a crash helmet on and goggles. It was called the Creepers. And then in 1959, working at Ray's, the club kind of broke up. We started another club called Daytona Beach Custom and Timing Association. I went to the city of Daytona Beach to the recreation department and asked permission to use Spruce Creek Airport for a drag strip.
And it was deserted at the time, right?
Yes, there was trees growing out of the runway. Mm-hmm. We went out there, I got permission. It costed a little bit of money. We had to show proof of insurance, fire protection, evac, ambulance, and we had to have the sheriff there. We had to have the fire department there. Had to have an ambulance there. I got all this lined up, and I went to old man Allender. He was in charge of recreation department in Volusia County. He was willing to give us the airport. We had to show proof of insurance. We did. Lloyd's of London insured us. And our club didn't have any money. We're poor old boys. We're just poor old working people. But we managed to scrape up the money to buy the insurance. The next 3 weekends in a row, I donated all my old trophies, took the names off of them, NASCAR trophies. I still got a lot of them. And I put enough trophies out there for every class we ran for the next 3 weeks. And we made money. And then once we paid our bills, we gave City of Daytona Beach Recreation Department 10% of our net take. And that's how we kept that strip. Then I went to work full-time racing with Ray Fox. I got out of drag racing because the deal I had going, that if we had an extra race car to drive, Mr. Fox would give me the chance. Never happened. They were always wrecked. But we kept that strip out there running for 8 years, and then they broke up. And about 10 years later, or longer, we formed Daytona Beach Street Rods, Stu Sargent's house, and he was our first president. I was the second president, and nobody else wanted to take the job. So Stu was our president for a good 10 years. His wife was president for a couple of years. Rick Finzer was the president for a couple of years. And then as a Street Rod Club is still going, it's called the Turkey Rod Run at the Daytona Beach International Speedway. We're celebrating our 45th anniversary this coming Thanksgiving.
Yep, that's pretty darn good. 45 years, and it has grown to be the largest in the Southeast just because of this guy. So after all these years, his presence and his input is still being felt today. It's pretty amazing. And what would you do, going back to NASCAR real quick, what would you do to change NASCAR right today?
Go back to stock automobiles.
There you go. All right.
Then you'd find out who your race stars really are.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Grandma Cleanbill, my great-grandmother, she could drive one of those cars today. And I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
If your heart don't give out of you and you can turn left, you can go around the racetrack with those cars today.
There you go. Well, this has been fantastic. And I think we still have a lot of information that we haven't touched yet. We might have to have an encore performance one of these days. Would you come out to check them out again, huh? What do you think? Awesome, huh? Fantastic.
Would not be a problem. I've had a blast.
Well, we're honored to have you. Yes, sir.
Anybody here would like to have a picture of one of the race cars that I worked on, I would autograph it for you.
For free.
Yeah, it won't cost you a dime. If you want one, see me after the show.
Yep. Like my business cards, they're absolutely free. But
thanks everybody for showing up.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'll tell you what. Next week we have Chip Weil, the president of Daytona International Speedway. He'll be sitting right here on this chair. And also, we want to thank you so much to Mike Multane, our engineer Shane Stanton, the crew at the North Turn Restaurant for sure. And you can catch us on our Facebook page, the Legends of Racing radio show, also Facebook Live. And all our shows are archived, so you can go back and see what you've missed in the past. And we have a lot of very, very interesting stuff coming up over the next couple of months. And it looks like we're going to keep this thing going as long as you folks will have us. And we thank you so much for your support.
It's a great show.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And he should know. He knows this stuff. Thank you, folks. Have a great week.
Thanks for coming out.
90
The
seconds.
Legends of Racing radio show originates live from the very spot where beach racing began, Racing's North Turn Beach Bar and Grill. Join us next time for the Legends of Racing radio show with Buz McKim.